Welcome to Tales from Sector 9, your portal to immersive sci-fi audio stories. If you enjoy deep space action, rogue AI, and conspiracy theory, you're in the right place. Tap like and subscribe to keep the adventures coming. Drop a comment and tell us where in the galaxy you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare for tonight's story. Spacetime's architect. John Duncan's fingers traced the delicate equations sprawled across his office whiteboard at MIT, each variable and constant flowing into the next like tributaries joining a mighty river. The soft hum of quantum processors filled the evening air as simulations ran endlessly in the background, testing and retesting his calculations. He paused, pressing his forehead against the cool surface of the board. Behind him, Boston's skyline glittered through the window, its buildings crowned with the telltale blue glow of zero-point energy reactors, a sight that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago in 2084. "You're doing it again, Johnny," a familiar voice called from the doorway. "Getting lost in those numbers like your old man used to." John turned to find Mira Blackwood leaning against the doorframe, her NASA credentials reflecting the harsh fluorescent light. Her expression carried the same mixture of concern and amusement it always did when she caught him working late. "The simulation's almost done," he said, gesturing to the holographic display that filled half his office. "I think I've finally found it, Mira. The bridge between quantum mechanics and general relativity. It's beautiful." Mira crossed the room, her eyes scanning the equations. Despite her expertise in aerospace engineering, even she struggled to follow the complexity of John's work. "Your grandfather would say you're thinking too much with your head and not enough with your heart." The mention of his grandfather sent John's mind drifting back to those summer months spent in the wilderness. He could almost smell the pine needles, feel the rough bark beneath his fingers as Chaska taught him to track, to survive, to become one with the land. The old man's words echoed in his memory. "The universe speaks to us in many languages, grandson. Numbers are just one of them." John's hand unconsciously moved to the medicine pouch he wore beneath his shirt, a gift from Chaska on his 18th birthday. Inside was a single eagle feather and a small piece of red pipestone from the quarries sacred to the Sioux. Even here, in the heart of MIT's advanced physics complex, he kept that connection to his heritage. The quantum processor chimed, pulling him back to the present. The simulation was complete. "My God," Mira whispered, staring at the results floating before them. "John, is this—" He nodded, his heart racing. "The unification theory. But it's more than that, Mira. These equations don't just describe space-time. They show us how to manipulate it." The holographic display showed a three-dimensional representation of his calculations, a perfect marriage of quantum fields and gravitational forces. What had started as a simple attempt to reconcile Einstein's work with quantum mechanics had evolved into something far more profound. "The Duncan equation," Mira said softly, testing the words. "They'll remember this moment, you know. The day physics changed forever." John barely heard her. His mind was already racing ahead, seeing the implications unfold like a cosmic flower blooming. With this equation, humanity could harness vacuum energy, stabilize negative mass fields, and potentially achieve faster-than-light travel. It was the key to the stars themselves. But something else nagged at him, a warning that seemed to come from deep in his bones. His grandfather had taught him that every gift from the universe came with responsibility, with the need for wisdom in its use. The equations before him held power beyond imagining, power that could reshape reality itself. The office door hissed open again, and Dr. Malcolm Duncan strode in, his silver hair disheveled and his eyes bright with excitement. "The monitoring system flagged your results," he said, barely containing his enthusiasm. "Show me." As John began explaining his breakthrough to his father, he couldn't shake the feeling that he stood at a crossroads. In bridging the gap between quantum mechanics and general relativity, he had also bridged the two worlds that defined him: the rational, scientific realm of his father and the spiritual, intuitive wisdom of his grandfather. The sun set over Boston, casting long shadows through the office windows. In the gathering darkness, the equations glowed like ancient runes, holding secrets that would change the course of human history. John Duncan, the man who walked between worlds, had unlocked the fundamental language of the universe itself. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, he heard his grandfather's voice, carrying a warning: some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. The Grand Lecture Hall at ITMO University in St. Petersburg, hummed with anticipation. Holographic displays flickered in the air, showing John's equation from multiple angles as he addressed the assembled crowd of the world's leading physicists and military officials. "The implications are clear," John said, his voice carrying through the ancient hall. "We're not just describing space-time anymore. We're learning to speak its language, to reshape its very fabric." He gestured to the elegant mathematics floating before him, each symbol pulsing with soft blue light. In the front row, Dr. Elena Petrov leaned forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. Behind her stern expression, John caught a glimpse of something else: concern, perhaps even fear. She understood more than most what his equation truly meant. The questions came rapid fire after his presentation. John handled them all with practiced ease, even as he noticed General Vasily Orlov in the back of the hall, speaking quietly into his neural comm unit. The general's cybernetic augmentations glinted in the low light, standard issue for Russian military command. "Dr. Duncan," Elena stood, her voice cutting through the excited murmur of the crowd. "Have you considered the implications if your equation fell into the wrong hands? The potential for weaponization?" The hall fell silent. John touched the medicine pouch beneath his shirt, drawing strength from it as his grandfather had taught him. "Knowledge itself is neutral, Doctor. Petrov, it's how we choose to use it that matters. My equation could give us clean energy, faster than light travel, a path to the stars themselves. Or yes, it could be weaponized. That choice belongs to all of us." Later, in his hotel room overlooking the Neva River, John stood at the window watching autonomous drones patrol the night sky. The city had changed since his last visit. More neural interface stations, more security checkpoints, more signs of a world racing toward a technological singularity it might not be ready for. His tablet chimed with an incoming message from Mira. "Pentagon's going crazy over your presentation. Half the physics community is calling you the new Einstein. The other half thinks you're going to destroy the universe. Miss you, dinosaur. Come home soon." John smiled at her use of their old joke about his refusal to get neural implants. He preferred to rely on his natural abilities, a choice that made him increasingly rare in academic circles. His grandfather's teachings about maintaining connection to one's true self had always resonated more deeply than the promise of technological enhancement. The attack came without warning. The room's smart systems went dark first, plunging him into total darkness. John's body reacted before his mind could process what was happening, muscle memory from countless hours of training with his grandfather taking over. He dropped and rolled as the window exploded inward, fragments of smart glass raining down where he had stood moments before. Dark figures poured through the breach, their movement betraying military training. Their combat suits absorbed light, making them nearly invisible to the naked eye. But John didn't need to see them. He could feel their presence, sense their movement through the air as Chaska had taught him. He managed to disable two before a third caught him with some kind of neural disruptor. The world spun, his consciousness fragmenting like light through a prism. As darkness claimed him, John heard General Orlov's voice. Carefully with him. His mind is what we need. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was his tablet, still displaying Mira's message. Below it, a single line of his equation glowed in the darkness, the mathematical expression for bending space itself. He awoke to the cold. Even before opening his eyes, John knew he was no longer in St. Petersburg. The air held a different quality, thinner, sharper, with the distinct bite of Siberian winter. His grandfather had taught him to read the air this way, to let it tell its story. Ah, Dr. Duncan, welcome back to consciousness. General Orlov's voice carried the artificial warmth of someone used to interrogations. I apologize for the theatrical nature of your arrival, but we have much to discuss about your remarkable equation. John opened his eyes to find himself in a sterile white room. Through a reinforced window, he could see snow-covered forests stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in Siberia, then, far from any help. Your equation is brilliant, Orlov continued, but incomplete. You've held back crucial elements in your publication. We need the full theory. The equation published is complete, John replied, his voice rough. The rest is just engineering. Orlov's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on him. We both know that's not true. You've discovered something profound about the nature of reality itself, something that could give Russia the advantage it needs in this new technological Cold War. As Orlov spoke, John's mind was already racing, cataloging details about his surroundings, the vibration of heavy machinery far below them, the slight hesitation in the guards' movements, suggesting they were receiving orders through neural implants, the way the snowflakes fell outside, telling him wind patterns and temperature. All the things his grandfather had taught him to observe, to read like a story written in the world itself. The same instincts that had helped him unlock the mysteries of space-time would now need to help him survive. You have two choices, Doctor. Duncan, Orlov said, his artificial smile never wavering. Cooperate and help us understand every aspect of your discovery, or... He let the threat hang unspoken in the air. John met his gaze steadily, feeling the weight of the medicine pouch against his chest. He thought of his grandfather's words. Sometimes the greatest strength is in knowing when to bend like the river around the stone. Outside, the Siberian winter howled, and somewhere in the vast white expanse, destiny waited. 3 weeks of interrogation had taught John the facility's rhythms, the guard rotation patterns, the slight power fluctuation when the quantum containment field cycled, the blind spots in the neural-linked surveillance system. But most importantly, he had learned patience, just as his grandfather had taught him during those long hunting trips in his youth. The deer does not choose when to run, Chaska had said. It waits for the moment to present itself. That moment came during a midnight power transition, when the facility's quantum cores switched from primary to secondary systems. In the brief second of darkness, John was already moving. The guard's neural implants would be momentarily offline, their enhanced reactions dulled to merely human speeds. He had prepared carefully, studying the facility's layout through careful observation, and the subtle hints dropped by Elena Petrov during her visits. She had never openly helped him, but her careful positioning during their conversations had told him everything he needed to know about the building's structure. The first guard went down silently, a precise strike to the neural port at the base of his skull, a weakness in all augmented soldiers. The second barely had time to reach for his weapon before John was on him, using the close-quarters combat techniques that had been drilled into him since childhood. In the wild, there is no room for hesitation, his grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Act with certainty, or do not act at all. The facility's alarms began to scream as John raced through the corridors, his bare feet silent on the cold floor. He had timed it perfectly. The night shift was at its minimum strength, and the brutal Siberian winter outside would make them think twice about a prolonged pursuit. He found what he needed in a storage room. Basic cold weather gear, enough to give him a fighting chance against the elements. The rest he would have to acquire the way his grandfather had taught him, from the land itself. The outer door's quantum lock took precious seconds to hack, using a bypass sequence he had derived from his own equations. As it finally slid open, the bitter Siberian wind hit him like a physical blow. Behind him, he could hear the heavy boots of the security response team. John didn't hesitate. He plunged into the darkness, letting the snow swallow him whole. The first night was the hardest. The temperature dropped well below freezing, and the facility's searchlights painted the snow-covered landscape in harsh relief. Drones buzzed overhead, their thermal scanners searching for any sign of human heat signatures. But John had learned from the best. He packed himself into a snow cave, using the thermal properties of snow itself to mask his body heat, a trick learned during those long winters with Chaska. As he huddled in the darkness, he recited his grandfather's teachings like a mantra. The cold is not your enemy. It is simply another language of the earth. Learn to speak it, and it will shelter you. Dawn brought new challenges. The facility had deployed their elite Spetsnaz hunters, men and women trained in Arctic warfare and equipped with the latest tracking technology. Their neural implants would allow them to process environmental data in real time, making them formidable predators. But John had advantages they couldn't match. Where they relied on technology, he read the wind and snow directly. Where their augmented vision searched for heat signatures, he looked for the subtle signs of animal movement that would lead him to food and shelter. He moved at night when possible, navigating by the stars as his ancestors had done for countless generations. During the day, he became a ghost, using every trick Chaska had taught him to move without leaving traces. He fashioned snares from available materials, caught small game, and used every part as the old ways demanded. Weeks turned into months. Spring came, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The melting snow made tracking easier for his pursuers, but also provided him with more resources. He learned the patterns of the land, the movements of the animals, the subtle changes in weather that could mean the difference between life and death. The isolation should have broken him. Instead, it crystallized something in his mind. During the long nights in makeshift shelters, he found himself working through his equations, seeing them in a new light. The mathematical language he had discovered to describe space-time began to mirror the natural patterns he observed in his survival. All things are connected, Chaska had told him. The path of the eagle in the sky follows the same laws as the atoms in your body. Learn to see the patterns, and you will never truly be lost. One night, sheltering in a cave while a spring storm raged outside, John had an epiphany. His equations weren't just describing space-time. They were describing the fundamental patterns of reality itself. The same principles that governed quantum fields also governed the flow of rivers, the growth of plants, the migration of animals. He began scratching calculations into the cave wall with a piece of charcoal, the mathematics flowing from him in a burst of inspiration. This was what had been missing from his original equation, the understanding that came not from pure intellect, but from direct communion with the natural world. 6 months into his escape, he encountered his first major setback. A drone sweep caught him in the open, and within hours, the hunters were closing in. He found himself trapped between a rushing river and advancing search parties, their neural interfaces giving them perfect coordination in the fading light. In that moment, John remembered one of his grandfather's most important lessons. Sometimes survival means letting go of your fears and trusting the river to carry you. He dived into the icy waters, letting the current take him. The hunters would expect him to fight against it, to try to reach the nearest shore. Instead, he surrendered to the flow, letting it carry him far beyond their search perimeter. As autumn painted the Siberian landscape in brilliant colors, John had become something more than either the scientist or the survivalist he had been. He was both and neither, a man who had learned to see the universe in its totality, from the quantum scale to the cosmic, from the mathematical to the spiritual. The pursuing forces had decreased over time, but they hadn't given up. Orlov was still out there, driven by the desire to control the power of the Duncan equation. But John had learned patience. He knew that, like all things in nature, his journey would reach its conclusion when the time was right. On a clear night, as the aurora borealis danced overhead, John looked up at the stars and smiled. In his head, the equations that could bend space itself had evolved, informed by months of living in harmony with the natural world. He knew now that he had only begun to understand the true implications of his discovery. The border with Mongolia was still weeks away, but John Duncan was no longer running. He was following the path that the universe itself had laid out for him, one step at a time. The lights of Ulaanbaatar appeared on the horizon like stars emerging at dusk. After 13 months in the wilderness, the sight of civilization was almost jarring to John. He stood on a ridge overlooking the Mongolian capital, his clothes worn and weather-beaten, his beard long and wild. The medicine pouch still hung around his neck, the one piece of his old life that had stayed with him through everything. During his final push to the Mongolian border, he had evaded 3 separate drone sweeps and a last-ditch attempt by Orlov's forces to intercept him. But the skills honed over months of survival had served him well. As his grandfather always said, "The hunter who chases 2 deer catches neither." The Russians had spread their forces too thin, trying to predict his movements with technology rather than understanding. The U.S. Embassy rose from the city center, its quantum shielding creating a subtle distortion in the air around it. Inside those walls waited safety, contact with home, and a return to his old life. Yet John hesitated. "You look troubled, my friend," came a voice behind him. John turned to find an elderly Mongolian herder approaching, leading a horse. The man's eyes held the same wisdom John had often seen in his grandfather's. "The path forward isn't always as clear as the path that led here," John replied. The old man nodded. "The eagle must return to earth to feed, but it never forgets the sky." He offered John a ride into the city, an act of kindness that brought tears to his eyes. The embassy's security systems scanned him thoroughly as he entered, their quantum sensors probing for any signs of technological tampering or coercion. The staff's eyes widened as they confirmed his identity. John Duncan, the physicist who had vanished in Russia over a year ago. Within hours, he was cleaned up, debriefed, and speaking with familiar faces through secure quantum channels. Mira's hologram appeared before him, her hand instinctively reaching out before remembering the limitation of the technology. "You crazy dinosaur," she said, her voice breaking. "We thought, when we lost contact." "I had good teachers," John replied, touching the medicine pouch. "Both scientific and spiritual." His father's call was more complex. Malcolm Duncan had aged years in the months of his son's absence, his hair now completely white. "Your equation," he said without preamble. "During your captivity, I've been working on it. There's something we missed, isn't there? Something about the fundamental nature of reality itself." John smiled. "The mathematics was only part of it, Dad. Out there, surviving in the wilderness, I learned to see the patterns that connect everything. The equations don't just describe reality, they reveal its underlying harmony." Back at MIT 2 weeks later, John stood in his old office, now cluttered with a year's worth of papers analyzing his work. The academic world had not stood still in his absence. Teams worldwide had been exploring the implications of the Duncan equation, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible, but they were all missing the crucial insight he had gained in the wilds of Siberia. The equation wasn't just about manipulating space-time. It was about understanding humanity's place within it. Late that night, after the quantum processors had been shut down and the labs had emptied, John began to write. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he poured out everything he had learned. The mathematics flowed naturally now, informed by both his scientific knowledge and the deep wisdom he had gained from his time in the wilderness. The new version of his equation was both simpler and more profound. It showed how vacuum energy could be harnessed not through brute force, but through harmony with the natural fluctuations of space-time itself. The path to faster-than-light travel wasn't about conquering physics. It was about understanding our place within it. As he worked, he felt the presence of both his teachers with him. His father's rigorous scientific training helped him structure the mathematics, while his grandfather's spiritual wisdom guided him in seeing the larger patterns. For the first time, the two sides of his heritage were in perfect balance. Mira found him there at dawn, surrounded by floating equations that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "You've done it, haven't you?" she asked, studying the elegant mathematics before her. "You've found the key to actual faster-than-light travel." John nodded, but his expression was troubled. "The question isn't whether we can do it, Mira. It's whether we're ready for what we'll find out there." Reports were already coming in about various governments and corporations racing to weaponize different aspects of his original equation. Russia, China, the United States. They all saw it as a tool for dominance rather than understanding. But John had learned something essential during his year in the wilderness. True power came not from control, but from harmony. The same principles that had helped him survive in Siberia would now guide humanity's first steps to the stars. He thought of his grandfather's words, "Every journey changes the traveler." The question is, are you ready to become what the journey needs you to be? Looking at the completed equation floating before him, John Duncan knew that his greatest journey was just beginning. The experimental deep space vessel Horizon hung in Neptune's orbit like a strange metallic arrow, its modular design unlike anything humanity had built before. The ship's distinctive profile was dominated by the massive toroidal quantum containment rings that encircled its central hull, designed to channel and stabilize exotic matter flow. The experimental craft's crystalline navigation array glinted in the distant sunlight, creating prismatic distortions through its quantum shielding. In the ship's engineered heart, a spherical chamber specifically designed to handle the intense space-time distortions of a warp field, John Duncan made final adjustments to the experimental warp core, the culmination of his revised equation. "Final diagnostics are green," Mira reported from her station, her voice tight with anticipation. She had insisted on being here for this moment, despite the risks. The containment fields are holding steady. Through the reinforced viewport, Neptune's blue disk dominated the view, a reminder of how far they'd come and how far they had yet to go. The station had been built in secret over the past year, funded by a coalition of independent scientists and researchers who shared John's vision of exploration over exploitation. "Dr. Duncan," Elena Petrov's voice came through the quantum communication. She had defected from Russia 6 months ago, bringing with her crucial insights into how Orlov planned to weaponize the original equation. "The vacuum energy readings are approaching optimal levels." John studied the holographic displays surrounding him, each one showing a different aspect of the experiment. The mathematics was elegant, beautiful in its simplicity. But more than that, it was right. He could feel it in the same way he had learned to feel the changing weather during his year in the wilderness. "Your grandfather would be proud." His father's voice crackled through the calm from Earth. Malcolm Duncan had undergone a profound change since his son's return, finally embracing the wisdom that existed beyond pure science. "He always said you would find your own path." John touched the medicine pouch that still hung around his neck. Inside, along with the eagle feather and pipestone, he had added a small piece of Siberian pine bark, a reminder of the lessons learned during his year of survival. "Beginning final power-up sequence," he announced, his fingers dancing across the control interface. "Initiating vacuum energy extraction." The warp core hummed to life, its crystalline structure pulsing with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. This was the crucial moment. Either his revised equation would work, creating a stable warp field, or... Warning klaxons suddenly blared through the station. "Multiple ships dropping out of stealth," Mira shouted. "Russian, Chinese, and American signatures. They must have tracked our quantum signatures." John's hands remained steady on the controls. He had known this moment might come. The world's powers had been searching for him ever since he disappeared from MIT 6 months ago, each hoping to claim his discovery for themselves. "They're demanding we shut down the experiment," Elena reported, her voice grim. "Orlov is leading the Russian contingent personally." Through the viewport, John could see the ships approaching, sleek predators swimming through the void. Even now, they were preparing to fire the weapons he had helped them create. each nation willing to risk everything to control the power of his equation. "John," Mira said softly, using his first name for the first time in years. "We're out of time." He looked at the warp core, its light now filling the engineering chamber with impossible colors. The equation that powered it was more than just mathematics. It was a key to understanding humanity's place in the cosmos. But that same equation, in the wrong hands, could tear reality itself apart. "Dad," he said into the comm, "do you remember what you told me when I first started studying physics? About how the greatest discoveries often require the greatest sacrifices?" There was a long pause before Malcolm replied, "I remember, son. I also remember what your grandfather told you about following the path that the universe itself provides." John smiled. Everything had led to this moment. His dual heritage, his year in the wilderness, the insights gained from both science and survival. He understood now why the equation had come to him and what he had to do with it. "Mira, Elena," he said calmly, "initiate emergency protocol Duncan Alpha. Get to the escape pods." "John, no." Mira started to protest, but he cut her off. "The universe is vast," he said, his fingers flying across the controls as he input the final calculations. "And humanity isn't ready for this power. Not yet. But someday." The warp core's light had become almost blinding now, the vacuum energy readings off the scale. John could feel reality beginning to bend around him, just as his equations had predicted. "Son," his father's voice broke. "Don't." "I love you, Dad," John said. "Tell grandfather. Tell him I finally understand what he meant about the eagle in the sky." With a final keystroke, he locked out all external control of the system. The approaching ships were too late. The warp field was already forming, wrapping around the space vessel horizon like a cocoon of distorted space-time. Through the viewport, John watched Mira and Elena's escape pod streak away toward the safety of the other modules. On his screens, he could see Orlov's ships desperately trying to lock weapons on his position, but the warp field was already affecting their targeting systems. In his final moments before activation, John Duncan thought of everything that had led him here. The mathematics that had opened the door to the impossible. The survival skills that had kept him alive in Siberia. The wisdom of two traditions, scientific and spiritual, finally working in harmony. "The journey begins," he whispered. The warp core's crystalline matrix began to pulse with increasing frequency, its modified geometry, based on Harold White's breakthrough research, reducing the massive energy requirements by orders of magnitude. The quantum vacuum energy extractors activated, drawing power from the zero-point field itself, while the Casimir effect generators created precise negative energy densities in the containment channels. Streams of stabilized exotic matter, John's solution to the negative mass problem, swirled through the carefully calibrated fields. Their negative energy signatures began warping local space-time, creating the impossible geometries predicted by his unified equation, the bridge between quantum mechanics and general relativity that had eluded physicists for generations. John watched in awe as space itself began to fold. Through the viewport, the stars stretched and distorted as the warp field intensified. The core's antimatter injection system engaged, providing the carefully calculated energy burst needed to amplify the quantum vacuum fluctuations. The modified bubble geometry took shape, requiring barely a fraction of the theoretical Jupiter mass energy that had once been thought necessary. The quantum gravity sensors showed the impossible, microscopic spacetime distortions scaling up to macroscopic levels, proving his theories about vacuum energy interaction with curved spacetime. Reality rippled as field strength readings exceeded anything humanity had achieved before, yet remained perfectly controlled within the parameters of his equations. With a silent flash of light that rippled through subspace, the warp bubble fully formed, its stability maintained by the continuous quantum-level manipulations his breakthrough had made possible. For a brief moment, John saw the universe as his equations described it, not just as mathematics, but as a unified dance of quantum fields and gravitational forces, proving that FTL travel wasn't just theoretical, but achievable through the precise manipulation of nature's fundamental forces. Then, the bubble collapsed inward, taking the space vessel horizon with it into a realm where Einstein's limitations held no power over the quantum reality beneath. When the light faded, nothing remained but a rapidly dissipating quantum signature and a mystery that would haunt humanity for generations. The first human-made warp drive had worked exactly as designed, representing humanity's first step beyond the light barrier through the perfect union of theoretical physics and technological innovation. Years later, long after the Neptune station had been converted into humanity's first faster-than-light research facility, a signal would be detected from deep space. It contained no words, no images, just a simple mathematical sequence, an elegant proof that built upon the Duncan equation, showing humanity the next step on its journey to the stars. And in that message, those who knew how to look would find something else. The wisdom that true power comes not from conquering the universe, but from learning to live in harmony with it. For John Duncan, the man who had bridged worlds, had become something new. Humanity's first explorer of the infinite, guided by both the precision of physics and the wisdom of his ancestors, forever walking the path between the known and the unknown. The eagle had found its sky at last. The Fractured Continuum. Captain Mason Reed squinted through the helicopter's reinforced windscreen at the Nevada sunset. The sky was wrong again. Threads of violet light wove through the clouds like cracks in painted glass, a phenomenon the brass had dubbed atmospheric anomalies. That was military speak for, we don't know what the hell it is, but don't ask questions. Reed had stopped asking questions years ago. Questions got you reassigned to desk duty, or worse, volunteered for the Experimental Weapons Division's latest project. Temporal distortions at 0.38 and rising, sir. Lieutenant Emma Cross's voice crackled through his headset. She tapped the quantum variance detector mounted beside the traditional avionics. The device was another unexplained addition to their Black Hawk, retrofitted last month alongside hardened circuitry and crystalline sensor arrays that Command refused to elaborate on. Copy that, Lieutenant. Keep us steady at Angels 20. Reed banked the helicopter in a wide arc around Sector 7's perimeter. The classified testing range sprawled below them, a maze of concrete bunkers and geometric patterns carved into the desert floor. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was the heart of America's dimensional research program, whatever that meant. Through the side window, Reed caught a glimpse of the massive dish arrays that dominated the facility's eastern edge. They weren't radio telescopes, despite what the cover story claimed. He'd seen them move in ways that defied physics, tracking invisible targets across the sky, while emitting that same violet light that now painted the horizon. You ever wonder what they're looking for out there, Captain? Emma's question carried an edge of curiosity that made Reed uncomfortable. She was too new, too eager to understand the mysteries they guarded. He'd been like that once, before Kandahar, before he'd learned that some doors were better left closed. Above our pay grade, Cross. He kept his voice neutral, professional. Focus on the quantum variance detector screamed. Numbers flashed across its display in impossible sequences as every warning light in the cockpit blazed to life. Through the windscreen, reality rippled like heat waves off summer asphalt. Multiple contacts. Emma's fingers flew across her console. Sir, they're not showing up on traditional radar, but the crystalline array is... She stopped mid-sentence, her face bathed in sudden, brilliant light. Reed looked up. The violet sky had torn open like tissue paper, and through the rent poured a luminescence that defied description. It coalesced into a perfect sphere, an orb of shifting colors that hung impossibly in the air before them. As Reed yanked the stick hard left, he already knew it was too late. The orb moved with liquid grace, matching their trajectory. Mayday, mayday, this is Shadow 6. He punched the emergency beacon even as the helicopter's electronics began to fail. We are experiencing... What? What could he possibly report? We are experiencing unknown phenomena at coordinates. The orb expanded, enveloping them in light that seemed to sing. Reed's last thought before consciousness fled was that he should have asked more questions, should have wondered why the sky had started fracturing months ago, should have... The Black Hawk vanished, leaving only a fading ripple in the violet-threaded sky. Below, in Sector 7's control room, General Victor Hale watched the incident replay on hardened monitors. He lifted a secure phone and spoke 5 words. The Lumini have taken them. Time crystallized around them. Reed blinked awake to find his helicopter suspended in a space that rejected every law of physics he knew. The Black Hawk hung motionless, caught in a lattice of light that stretched in impossible directions. Through the windscreen, geometric formations rose like cities made of frozen light, their facets refracting colors that had no names in any human language. Status report, he managed, his voice sounding strange in the altered air. The words left his mouth in slow motion, yet seemed to reach his ears too quickly. All systems dark, sir. Emma's voice trembled slightly, but her training held. No power, no electronics, except the quantum variance detector. It's, well, you should see this. The detector's display pulsed with readings that made Reed's head hurt. Numbers scrolled past faster than human eyes could track, occasionally freezing mid-digit before shattering into fragments of light that danced across the screen. Cooper? Martinez? Reed called to his crew in the back. Here, sir. Cooper, his gunner, sounded shaken. Martinez is unconscious but breathing. Sir, you need to see outside. The crystals, they're moving. Reed turned to look through the side window and felt reality tilt. The crystalline structures weren't just moving. They were growing, shifting, breathing. Patterns of light flowed through them like blood through veins, and as he watched, a formation nearby began to unfold, like a flower made of aurora borealis. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, bypassing their ears to materialize directly in their minds. Reed's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but the holster was empty. No, the gun was there, but it had transformed into a sculpture of light, as useless as a glass paperweight. A figure emerged from the crystalline formation, its translucent skin glowing with internal light that pulsed in time with its words. It was humanoid, but unmistakably alien, its features too perfect, too symmetrical to have evolved on Earth. Behind it, more figures emerged, their bodies rippling with colors that seemed to correspond to emotions Reed could almost, but not quite, understand. Captain Mason Reed, the first being said, though its mouth never moved. I am Araxis, and we are the Lumini. We apologize for the abrupt nature of your extraction, but time grows short. In your terms, we are approaching a temporal confluence that will determine the fate of multiple realities. What do you want from us? Reed's voice was steady, but his mind raced. The crystalline prison, the transformed weapons, the casual display of impossible technology, everything screamed trap. Want? A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the being's luminescent skin. We want to show you truth, Captain. Your government's weapons experiments have created fractures in dimensional stability. These fractures are being exploited by entities you know as the Draco. Even now they prepare to... Sir! Emma's sharp cry cut through the telepathic conversation. She pointed to the quantum variance detector, which had stopped its chaotic display. A single message scrolled across its screen in English. They lie. Trust nothing. The words flickered and vanished, replaced by new readings. But Reed had seen them, and from the subtle shift in the Lumini's glow, they had too. Interesting, a new voice chimed in. This one felt different, less polished, more genuine. A smaller figure emerged from behind Araxis, its light patterns more chaotic, less controlled. You see, Captain? Even your primitive technology senses the complexities at play. I am Nira, and unlike my colleagues, I believe you deserve more than carefully curated truth. Nira. Araxis's tone carried warning, but the smaller being continued. Your world stands at a crossroads, Captain Reed. Yes, the Draco pose a threat, but ask yourself, why did we choose your helicopter? Why now? The answers lie in Sector 7, in experiments your General Hale... Enough. Araxis's interruption came with a pulse of energy that sent ripples through the crystalline environment. They are not ready for... A deep tremor cut through the space, setting the crystal structures vibrating at a frequency that made Reed's teeth ache. The Lumini's lights flickered in what looked distinctly like alarm. Timeline collapse approaching, one of them announced. The Draco have begun their assault on Sector 7. The weapons... Show them, Nira insisted. Show them everything. The crystal structures around them flared to life, becoming screens that displayed images Reed struggled to comprehend. He saw Sector 7's dish arrays firing beams of violet light into tiers in the sky. He saw reptilian figures moving through shadows in Pentagon corridors. He saw General Hale shaking hands with something that wore human skin, like an ill-fitting suit. Your weapons, Nira explained quickly, are not meant to defend Earth. They are designed to shatter dimensional barriers, to allow the Draco full access to your reality. Your own leaders have betrayed. The images shattered. Through the fragmenting views, Reed caught glimpses of Sector 7 erupting in violet fire, of reality itself tearing apart at the seams. The crystalline world around them groaned like breaking glass. We don't have time for gradual revelation, Nira announced, moving closer to the helicopter. Her light patterns had shifted to something urgent. almost desperate. "Captain Reed, you and your crew were chosen because you were already dead." "What?" Emma's whisper carried horror. "The temporal shock wave from the Sector 7 collapse reached your helicopter moments after we extracted you. In your original timeline, you died. We pulled you out because you're now untethered from causality. You can move freely through dimensions. Help us prevent this catastrophe before it begins. But you must choose quickly, and you must choose freely." Reed looked at his crew, Emma's pale face, Cooper's clenched jaw, Martinez stirring groggily in the back. Then he looked out at the fracturing crystal dimension, at the images of Earth's reality splitting apart, at the desperation in Nira's luminescent form. "Choose what?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Whether to trust us," Nira said simply. "Whether to learn the full truth about your world, your leaders, and the war that's been hiding in plain sight. The Draco believe humanity will choose slavery over extinction. The other Lumini believe you must be manipulated into making the right choice. I believe you deserve to choose with open eyes." The crystal world shuddered again. Through the fragmenting walls, Reed caught glimpses of other realities, other possibilities. In one, Earth burned. In another, humanity served as vessels for Draco consciousness. In a third, the planet was whole but empty, sterilized by dimensional weapons. "Time fractures," Araxis warned. "Choose now, Captain Reed. Trust our guidance, or trust your own judgment. But know that this choice will ripple across all possible Earths." Reed looked at the quantum variance detector, its screen now blank. He thought about all the questions he'd stopped asking, all the anomalies he'd learned to ignore. He thought about General Hale's secret meetings, the violet sky, the weight of willful ignorance. He met Nira's gaze. "Show me everything," he said. "No filters, no manipulation, just truth." Her answering smile was like a supernova. The dimensional barriers were failing. Reed stood in what remained of Sector 7's control room, but reality had begun to split like light through a prism. Through one facet, he watched himself die in the helicopter crash that should have been his fate. Through another, he saw Earth consumed by Draco vessels that looked like tears in space itself. Through a third, humanity marched in endless columns, their eyes glazed with reptilian gold, their bodies mere vessels for their conquerors. The convergence point approaches. Nira's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Her luminescent form flickered between dimensions, holding the fragmenting timelines together through sheer will. The weapon must be destroyed now, or every possible Earth falls. The quantum dimensional array loomed before them, its massive dish no longer pointing at the sky but turned inward, focused on a singular point in space-time. General Hale's final gift to his Draco masters, a device capable of shattering the walls between realities. The violet light that had haunted Reed's sky for months now poured from its focal point, like a wound in the universe. "Sir." Emma's voice shook as she monitored the quantum variance detector, its display spinning through impossible numbers. "Timeline collapse in 3 minutes. Whatever we're going to do, we can't just destroy it," Cooper argued from his position by the emergency controls. "Sir, if what they showed us is true, this facility is the linchpin of every timeline. Destroying it here doesn't just affect our Earth, it rewrites every possible version of history." Reed's hand tightened on the crystalline key the Lumini had given him. It pulsed against his palm, alive with the same energy that had first pulled them from their doomed helicopter. One twist in the array's control matrix would overload the system, collapsing this nexus point and every timeline connected to it. Captain Reed. General Hale's voice drew his attention to where the man stood surrounded by a squad of soldiers, their weapons trained on Reed's team. But the general was changing, his human facade cracking to reveal scaled skin beneath. Think carefully about what you're doing. The Draco offer humanity a place in their empire, structure, purpose. The Lumini, they offer only chaos, free will without direction. How many humans have you seen handle freedom responsibly? He speaks truth of a kind. Araxis's telepathic voice joined the chorus. The senior Lumini's form manifested partially, geometric patterns of light outlining an almost human shape. Humanity's development must be guided, but not enslaved. Let us show you a better path. Give us the key. We will ensure Earth's transition is... No more manipulation, Nira cut in. Her light patterns surged with emotion as she fully materialized beside Reed. No more games. Show him Araxis. Show him what you've hidden even from me. Reality shuddered. The quantum variance detector screamed as new timelines crystallized in the fragmenting air. Reed saw Earth's past unfold like pages in a book. The Lumini and Draco, ancient enemies, seeding competing influences in human development. Civilizations risen and fallen as test cases in their eternal war. Humanity shaped and reshaped like clay, never truly free to choose its own path. 1 minute to collapse, Emma reported. Her voice seemed to come from multiple directions as timeline fragments multiplied around them. Sir, the focal point is reaching critical... The air split open. Through the tear, Reed saw General Hale's true form emerge. A Draco Lord, magnificent and terrible. Behind him, more tiers opened, disgorging reptilian shapes that moved like liquid shadow. The soldiers' weapons transformed, becoming crystalline devices that hummed with violet light. Enough discussion, the thing that had been Hale declared. The key, now, or watch your species burn. Reed looked at the crystalline key in his hand, then at his crew. Emma, Cooper, Martinez, all watching him with trust despite the madness unfolding around them. He looked at Nira, who had shown him truth without agenda, and at Araxis, who believed humanity needed to be led. He looked at the Draco Lord wearing his general's face, offering humanity a cage gilded with purpose. The quantum variance detector sparked and died, its last reading burning into Reed's mind. Every timeline converging on this single point, this one choice. He thought of all the questions he'd stopped asking, all the times he'd chosen comfortable ignorance over uncomfortable truth, all the moments he'd let others decide humanity's path because deciding for themselves seemed too frightening, too heavy a burden. Maybe humanity isn't ready for the truth, Reed said quietly. Maybe we'll make mistakes, choose wrong, hurt ourselves. He straightened, meeting the Draco Lord's gaze. But they'll be our choices, our mistakes, our future. Timeline collapse in 10 seconds, Emma whispered. Reed moved, not toward the array's control matrix, but toward its focal point. The crystalline key flared in his hand, responding to his decision. Captain! Multiple voices, human, Lumine, Draco, cried out in alarm. Some choices, Reed said, need to be unmade. He thrust the key directly into the focal point of the dimensional array. Light exploded outward as reality itself began to unravel. The last thing he heard was Nira's voice, tinged with something that might have been pride. And so, humanity chooses. The quantum dimensional array imploded, time fractured, and in that shattering moment, every possible Earth was wiped clean, every manipulation undone, every path reset to zero. A new timeline began, one written not by Lumini or Draco, but by humanity itself. In the end, that was the only choice that mattered. Consciousness returned like scattered light, finding focus through a prism. Reed opened his eyes to a world between worlds. The crystalline dimension had changed, its geometric certainties replaced by fluid, organic shapes that flowed like liquid light. He floated in this luminescent limbo, aware that his body wasn't quite physical anymore. Next to him, Emma, Cooper, and Martinez existed as patterns of light and memory, their essences preserved in the space between collapsed timelines. The reset was successful. Nira's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, but it had changed too. Gone was the subtle manipulation that even she had carried. In its place was something rawer, more honest. Her form coalesced nearby, no longer trying to maintain humanoid shape, but existing as pure luminescence. Every timeline, every manipulation, every careful plan of both Lumini and Draco, all of it undone. Did we? Reed's thoughts felt strange, translating directly into light patterns that rippled through the space around him. Did we die? In a manner of speaking. Another presence joined them, Araxis, but humbled, his former geometric perfection replaced by something more natural. When you destroyed the focal point, you shattered every existing timeline. But your choice, your willingness to sacrifice everything to free humanity, it created something new, something neither we nor the Draco expected. The space around them shifted, and Reed saw Earth, not one Earth, but infinite possibilities being born, each one free of alien manipulation, each one truly belonging to humanity for the first time in its history. Your world is rewriting itself, Nira explained. Human choices, human consequences, no more shadowy guidance, no more careful cultivation, just freedom. What about us? Emma's voice carried concern for their team, even now. What happens to people who were caught in the collapse? The space rippled with what felt like Nira's amusement. You exist in potential now, neither alive nor dead in the traditional sense. You've become something new, witnesses to humanity's first truly free steps. Images flowed around them. A new Earth where the violet sky had never fractured, where Sector 7 had never been built, where humanity looked to the stars with wonder untainted by hidden manipulation. But there were darker images too, mistakes, conflicts, choices that would lead to hardship. They'll make errors, Araxis observed, without guidance. They'll learn, Reed interrupted. Even as patterns of light, his conviction burned bright. That's what you never understood. Humanity needs to make its own mistakes, face its own consequences. That's how we grow. Some of the Draco survived, Cooper noted, his essence picking up traces of their ancient enemies, trying to regroup in the spaces between dimensions. They'll try again. Perhaps. Nira's light patterns shifted thoughtfully. But Earth is different now. Protected. Protected by what? Martinez asked. By you, Araxis admitted. By what you've become. The choice you made. It didn't just reset timelines. It created guardians, watchers in the spaces between moments, not to manipulate, but to preserve humanity's right to choose. Reed felt it then, a new purpose flowing through his transformed consciousness. He and his crew had become something beyond physical form, beyond single timeline and reality. They would watch, but not interfere, guard, but not guide. The quantum variance detector, Emma's essence brightened with sudden understanding. The warnings it showed us, that was us, wasn't it? Will be us. Time doesn't work the same way here, does it? No, Nira agreed. Here, all moments exist simultaneously. You'll learn to navigate them, to observe without directing, to protect humanity's freedom to chart its own course. Through the flowing light around them, Reed watched new histories taking shape. He saw humanity stumbling, learning, reaching for the stars on their own terms. Some paths led to triumph, others to tragedy, but all of them were genuinely human. "What about the Lumini?" he asked. "Your own people?" Nira's essence rippled with something like pride. "Your choice changed us too, showed us that sometimes the greatest guidance is knowing when to step aside. We'll learn from humanity now, instead of trying to shape it." The space around them continued to shift, showing glimpses of Earth's new potential futures. Reed felt his consciousness expanding, adapting to this new form of existence. His crew moved closer, their essences harmonizing with his as they accepted their transformation from soldiers to witnesses. "So we watch," Emma said softly. "We protect, but we never interfere." "We preserve their right to choose," Reed agreed, "even if those choices are difficult to witness." Around them, infinity bloomed with possibility. Earth's new timeline was taking shape, free from ancient manipulations, genuine in its triumphs and failures. And in the spaces between moments, between choices, between realities themselves, 4 guardians made of light and memory prepared to begin their eternal vigil. The reset was complete. The true history of humanity was about to begin. History remembers nothing of the dimensional war. On a cool autumn morning in 2075, Dr. Sarah Chen stands before the United Nations, presenting humanity's first confirmed detection of extraterrestrial intelligence. The signal is elegant in its simplicity, prime numbers pulsing from a star system 40 light-years distant. No hidden manipulation, no secret agendas, just one species reaching out to another across the cosmic void. In the spaces between moments, Reed watches. His consciousness, now woven into the quantum fabric of reality itself, perceives every timeline that might have been, every path not taken. He sees the shadow of what was undone, the Draco's golden-eyed slaves, the Lumini's careful manipulations, humanity dancing on strings they couldn't perceive. But that's not what catches his attention today. Beautiful, isn't it? Nira's essence mingles with his own, both of them far beyond their original forms. They found their own way here. Together, they observe the ripples of this moment spreading through probability space. In some timelines, humanity responds with fear, closing itself off from the stars. In others, they reach back with messages of peace and curiosity. In still others, they begin building ships to bridge the gap themselves. Every choice genuine, every consequence earned. The Draco are moving again. Emma's consciousness joins them, still carrying echoes of her human concern. Gathering in the dark spaces between galaxies. Let them. Cooper's essence pulses with certainty. Earth isn't the same world they tried to enslave. Humanity isn't the same species they thought they could control. Reed focuses his awareness on the quantum variance detector that Dr. Chen's team used to find the signal. The device is elegantly simple, nothing like the corrupted technology that once tore holes in reality at Sector 7. Humanity developed it through their own ingenuity, their own understanding of the universe's deeper nature. They're about to make first contact, Martinez observes, as they watch timelines crystallize around this nexus point. Real first contact, on their own terms. The space between moments shimmers with possibility. Reed perceives Araxis and other Lumini observers hovering in their own dimensional pocket, watching with what feels like pride tinged with regret. They've learned to be witnesses rather than shapers, students rather than teachers. Some of them remember in dreams, Nira notes, her essence rippling through probability waves. Artists paint crystalline cities they've never seen. Children look up at the stars and feel an echo of ancient choices unmade. But the knowledge doesn't guide them, Reed responds. It inspires them. They watch Dr. Chen activate the quantum variance detector, preparing to broadcast humanity's first official response to the stars. In the device's complex mathematics, Reed recognizes equations that mirror their own transformed state. Humanity unconsciously reaching toward universal truths without alien interference. The detector hums to life. In the gathered crowd, Reed perceives infinite possible futures branching outward. He sees a young girl who will one day develop faster than light travel. He sees a boy whose art will capture humanity's first steps into interstellar society. He sees 1,000 choices, each one freely made. They're nervous, Emma observes, her essence harmonizing with the quantum fluctuations of human emotion filling the chamber. Excited, afraid, everything they should be at a moment like this. Everything they need to be, Reed corrects. True feelings, not programmed responses. Real hope, not manufactured optimism. The quantum variance detector pulses, sending humanity's message to the stars, not in the violet light that once fractured reality, but in clean, clear signals that ripple through space-time like stones dropped in a cosmic pond. The message is simple. We are here. We are ready. We choose to answer. In the spaces between moments, Reed and his crew continue their vigil. They are not humanity's guardians, not really. That word implies too much control, too much interference. They are witnesses to humanity's first steps into a universe that no longer conspires to control them. Nira's essence stirs with a familiar question. Do you ever regret it? Giving up your physical form? Your place in the timeline? Reed watches Dr. Chen's historic transmission ripple outward toward distant stars. He feels the weight of all possible futures balanced on this single, genuine moment of human achievement. He remembers the choice he made in that fractured control room, choosing uncertainty over manipulation, freedom over security. No, he answers simply. They needed a clean slate more than we needed our old lives. The quantum variance detector's signals pulse outward, carrying humanity's first true message to the cosmos. In the infinite panorama of time and space, Reed and his transformed crew watch Earth's new history unfold. Not guided, not controlled, but growing wild and free as it was always meant to. So what now? Emma asks, her essence bright with curiosity about the endless possibilities stretching before them. Reed observes the myriad timelines branching from this moment, each one uniquely human, each one genuinely free. Now, he says, we watch them fly. In the United Nations chamber, Dr. Chen's quantum variance detector sends another pulse of prime numbers into space. Humanity reaches for the stars with hands unfettered by ancient manipulation, eyes clear of golden corruption, minds free to chart their own course through the cosmic sea. And in the spaces between moments, between choices, between the infinite possibilities of what might be, four guardians made of light and memory bear witness to humanity's first true steps into the unknown. This time, they walk alone, just as they should.